Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Hatman Strikes Back, Daily Boxing News. We're back with another live stream. Shout out to everybody in the live chat. Hopefully you can hear me loud and clear. If you can, let me know. Shout out to Dom Robinson, JM, Brad, Film Retrospective, Ricky Baker. We got a lot of boxing news to get through this evening. It's evening in my current location. How you guys doing? Let me know if you can hear me. Dominica, big up. Okay, loud and clear they're saying. Julius, big up. Milan. Yes, greetings. Milan is tuning in from Serbia. Big up the Serbian crew. Shout out to Frederick. Stu the Q, big up, big up. Shout out to Anthony YouTube. All right, we will allow the live chat to fill up and we'll get straight into the boxing news. Now, normally I start with the more minor stories first and then move on to the more major stories. But I'm going to do the inverse on today's stream and start with the main topic of the stream, which is, as you can see from the thumbnail, Alexander Usyk revealing the psychological tactics he used to help him defeat Tyson Fury. Alexander Usyk reveals the dark psychology that defeated Tyson Fury. Now, this comes from a video that Usyk uploaded to his YouTube channel earlier on today. I'm not sure how many of you have seen it. We got more people tuning in. Big Mac, big up. Kai, Film Retrospective, Coffee Guy, Isaac, JM. Yeah, that's what I'm going to come on to, JM. That's what I'm coming on to. So, let's talk about it. In a video that Alexander Usyk uploaded to his YouTube channel, where he was talking to Anthony Joshua, he revealed the psychological tactics, the dark mind games that he used to help him defeat Tyson Fury. For those of you who don't know, Alexander Usyk has actually got a degree in psychology, a master's degree no less. He's also got a degree in law. This is something which I found out relatively recently, and actually, Usyk obtained these degrees, including a PhD, in his 30s. So he wasn't, as far as I'm aware, highly educated, certainly not to this level, when he was a young man. But in his 30s, he decided to go back into academia and pick up these qualifications. And as I say, he has a master's degree in psychology, which he appears to be applying, at least in some fights, to his boxing career. So in this conversation that he had with Anthony Joshua, again, the video is up on his YouTube channel, he revealed that in the run-up to the first Fury fight, he'd read a book. I don't know whether it was Fury's book or his dad's book. Does his dad even have a book? Somebody's book. And in the book, Fury apparently said that during his childhood, he was afraid of being left alone. His dad would go off working or whatever the case may be, and he developed a fear of being alone. And that is why Alexander Usyk said in the run-up to that first fight, "Don't be afraid. I won't leave you alone." Words to that effect. And I remember when Tyson Fury was quoted, or when a journalist quoted that to Tyson Fury, Fury looked very confused. It's not often that Tyson Fury looks confused or looks troubled by something that he's told. But in that instance, he did look troubled. He looked confused by what he was being told. And he kind of recoiled and was like, "What are you on about?" And so Usyk said it was very strategic to use those particular words. "I won't leave you alone." Because it's kind of like mind games in the sense that it means two things at once. The first thing is he's playing on one of Tyson Fury's childhood fears, being left alone. And the second thing is he's playing on what took place in the fight, or what was about to take place in the fight, where he was going to apply relentless pressure to Tyson Fury and literally never leave him alone. So, as I say, it shows how Usyk has taken what he's learned. And look, I'm sure he was applying certain mind games or what have you long before he picked up his master's degree, but perhaps it's helped enhance these psychological warfare tactics that Usyk uses against some of his opponents. He also said, interestingly, that Tyson Fury is a guy who always needs to have people around him in order to feel comfortable. He needs his team around him, and he needs to make a show of himself. That's how he gets into his comfort zone. He has to be the center of attention. He has to create a whole show around him. He gains confidence and he gains his energy. He puts himself in the right mind frame by being in that type of environment. And so Usyk, the way I interpreted what he said anyway, his tactic was to try and take that away from Tyson Fury. Don't allow him to be the show. Don't allow him to be the center of attention. So, for example, in the first round, when Tyson Fury started showboating, Usyk didn't go for him. He didn't play into Fury's game. And he said, or he insinuated, those little things helped to unnerve Tyson Fury. And, of course, he's imparting this knowledge onto Anthony Joshua ahead of AJ fighting Tyson Fury, if the fight goes ahead, because Fury keeps on casting doubt over whether the fight will actually go ahead. Is he concerned about what Usyk is teaching him? Because Usyk did get the better of him twice, not just in the ring, but even outside the ring before those fights. Psychologically, he got the better of Tyson Fury. And that's really a first, because nobody has got the better of him before. So I thought it was a very, very interesting video where he was talking to Anthony Joshua in the gym. And by the way, there's a lot of training footage in that gym, which is quite interesting to watch. We'll come onto it a little bit later on. But let me know what you guys thought about Alexander Usyk revealing these dark psychological tactics that he employed to defeat Tyson Fury, to help him win those two fights, particularly the first fight. Let me know what you guys think in the live chat. Shout out to Dominica, he says, Portents of Doom video is a classic. Shout out to Liam Goff, G-Man in the building. Big up, big up. Shout out to June Sports, Afro Jam. Afro Jam says, when was he going to those universities? The guy lives in California. From 2020 on. That's right. Big up Dr. Wu, HMSP. Shout out to Film Retrospective. Yeah, some people are like that. They need a crowd. They need to be the center of attention. That's what gives them a boost. Some guys don't need to be the center of attention in order to have that psychological edge, in order to feel confident and good about themselves. So for Usyk to go all the way back, he said he read it in a book, literally, to Fury's childhood and pick up on a particular childhood fear or phobia. Those are pretty dark tactics. Shout out to Big Mac. Encircled says, to someone like Fury, the worst thing he can be is a non-factor. If you make all the play acting mean nothing, it will eat at him day and night. You know what? That's a great comment. Shout out to Otto. To make Fury a non-factor. That's a perfect way to describe it. Yes. That's what unnerves him. Omar says, every time I see Fury speak or his dad speak, I just yawn and keep scrolling. The Fury fatigue is a real thing, ladies and gentlemen. It absolutely is a real thing. And you know what? There's something else that I've noticed, because I did watch a couple of Tyson Fury interviews this week. Fury's giving off that dark energy again. You know, in the lead up to certain Fury fights, he's got a, you know, by his standards, a relatively positive kind of energy. But in the run up to this whack fight and in the longer run up to the AJ fight, there's a dark energy about him. Now look, that isn't necessarily a bad thing, because causing physical harm to somebody is a dark thing, right? So if you're a master of dark energy, like the Dark Lord Adam Booth, but no, if you're a master of the dark arts, and they call boxing an art, right? If you're a master of those dark arts, that can obviously benefit you. But when you come up against a guy who's above that, who's more effervescent in his energy in the run-up to a fight, like Usyk is, the light can often prevail, particularly if you don't have an enormous skill advantage over him and or physical and skill advantage. I do think the psychology had some effect on the outcome of both Usyk Fury fights, but particularly the first fight. Shout out to JR, says, can we address him appropriately as Partridge, please? Yeah, a lot of people don't like the fact that I'm not using the word Partridge or the name Partridge as much these days. Wave says, do you think that is what AJ was doing by not getting in the ring when Fury and Turkey was goading him into the ring, Hatman? You know what, Waved? I didn't think of it at the time. I'm ashamed to say, big up Chili Beef. I didn't think of it at the time, I'm ashamed to say, but you might be onto something, Waved. You actually might be onto something. Maybe it's Usyk that told Anthony Joshua, not necessarily not to get in the ring, but whenever Fury tries to control him and get him to do things that he wants, maybe Usyk is the one that told AJ, don't dance to his tune. You could be onto something there. You could actually be onto something. Big up Waved. That's right, some parliamentary procedure here. Big up north of normal. SJ says, does Tyson Fury have abandonment issues? I knew someone with this, and they would lie constantly to impress others. They feared being a non-entity. I think you've put it in a nutshell, what Usyk was trying to communicate and what we're expanding on here. Indeed, abandonment issues. Shout out to Kieran Malcolm. Shout out to everybody in the live chat. If you could all stick a like on this stream, it will be much appreciated. Thank you in advance. It really helps these streams get seen. Afro Jam says, where is the Luke Partridge account? The name always kills me. Yeah, if we can run the likes up, it'd really help. We've only got 44 likes and there's 142 concurrent viewers. If we can get the likes up to at least 70, that'll be a big help. Much appreciated. It only takes a split second. So we can come back onto this particular talking point. And again, if you haven't seen the video, I encourage all of you to see it. It's on Alexander Usyk's YouTube channel. It's him in the gym with Anthony Joshua training. But there's a moment where AJ, as you can see in the screenshot, is sitting down and Usyk is explaining his psychological approach to the first Fury fight. The mind games, which were very deliberate. Very, very, yeah, very deliberate. Very, I'm struggling to find the word I'm looking for here. Let's just go with deliberate. Giorgio says, PhD Partridge head damaged. Indeed. That's a great point there, Lucan. That's a great point. That's why Fury didn't attend the Ring Awards, because he wasn't going to be the center of attention. He was so upset by that. Shout out to JM for the super chat. He says, you have informed and entertained me for years, so here's a coffee on me. Big love. Hey, big up JM. Much appreciated for the support. All the best to you and yours. Big up JM every time. I try my best. And I'm glad some people like the thumbnails. Because the majority of comments I get about them are negative. But I think they're going to grow on people. I mean, when I switched up from the old thumbnails where I was just using screenshots with some text to the yellow background thumbnails, people complained when I made that switch up as well. So I guess people just don't like change. But with the AI thumbnails, I can just produce way more videos. I don't get bogged down making thumbnails all day. I'm not a Photoshop whiz. But again, big up JM. Anyway, let's move on to the next story. We do have quite a few boxing stories to get through here, folks. Shout out to everybody in the live chat. So Tyson Fury weighed in at 265 pounds for his fight with Mariusz Wach on Friday night. This is the lightest Fury has been for 2 years. Mariusz Wach coming in at nearly 300 pounds. Not really expecting too much from him. He's well into his 40s. The fight will not be televised. Perhaps, as I said in a previous video, we're going to get updates via blogs or whoever. Will there be somebody ringside, or maybe several people, streaming the fight from their phones? Surely there will be, because there's no broadcast. In fact, let me not make that assumption. I thought there could be, because there's no broadcast deal, but then Netflix do have the rights to show it as part of Fury's Home with the Furies Netflix series. What do you guys think? Will they be showing this? Now, 265 for Tyson Fury, I reckon, is a good weight. That's slightly heavier than he was for the first Usyk fight. It's lighter than he was for the second fight, substantially lighter. Shout out to Luca for the super chat. He says, hopefully Dubois fills in Partridge. I can't see Partridge going anywhere near Dubois. Can you? Yeah, the box says it there. Partridge would never fight Dubois, let's be real. I can't see it. JM says, not televised what? Yeah, apparently it's not televised. I was surprised too. It will not be televised live. Instead, it will be filmed and shown at a later date as part of one of the episodes for At Home with the Furies. Very weird. Afro Jam says, your AI is not as bad as the Zuffa AI. Garcia versus Ben poster is hilariously bad. I think the AI thing people are lashing out at is because it's everywhere. Okay. Behemoth says, I haven't read Fury's book, but I heard about the fears he had of being alone in the book. I knew early on Usyk was being dark with not leave you alone thing. Shout out to Martin Colton. He says, I think he'd struggle badly with Dubois. Fury's pitter-patter punches wouldn't keep Dubois at bay. One thing Fury said in a recent interview, which I do agree with, is activity is key. The more active you are, the better you're going to be. And it can help stave off ring rust. It can help slow the aging process as a fighter a little bit. Obviously, you're going to age. Father Time is undefeated. But if you can remain active, you'll put yourself in a much better position. Case in point, when Larry Holmes came back after 2.5 years to fight Mike Tyson for the heavyweight title, undisputed actually, he was tricked by Don King. He's spoken about this publicly, and he's spoken about it while sitting next to Mike Tyson during one of Mike Tyson's stage shows. So this is not Larry Holmes talking out the side of his neck. He's speaking facts. He said that Don King turned up at his house with a bag full of money and said, I want you to fight Mike Tyson. And Larry Holmes said, no way, I'll never be ready. Don King told him, don't worry about it. It's in 3 or 4 months' time. So he accepted the money. And then, I don't know, a couple of weeks later, he finds out that the date of the fight has been moved forward by several weeks, maybe over a month. And it left him with basically 4 or 5 weeks to train. Again, he's coming out of a 2.5-year layoff to fight Mike Tyson, who's banging his prime. So he said Don King tricked him with those dirty tactics. He got in there, he gave it a go for a couple rounds, but ultimately he got knocked out badly in the 4th. But Larry Holmes continued to box after that, and he had a load of fights in a very short space of time in the run-up to his fight with Ray Mercer, which he won. He gave Mercer his first loss. And people point to that and say, well, look, Mike Tyson must have beaten a good version of Larry Holmes because he went on to beat Ray Mercer. Yeah, but the version of Larry Holmes that beat Ray Mercer, even though he was a bit older, he was way more active. Activity is key. He was way more active and therefore way more sharp. So yeah, Fury speaks about activity being important, particularly at this age, and it is. The Fury that fought last time out against Arslan Bekmambetov didn't look particularly clever in there. I mean, I don't think it was a terrible performance when you take the inactivity and the age and the wear and tear into account. Be that as it may, that particular version of Fury, like let's say it wasn't Makhmudov in there that night against Fury, but instead Dubois would have beaten him. I've got no doubt. But can Fury raise his game significantly above what we saw against Makhmudov? I suspect he can, because we actually saw the ring rust falling off him during the fight. Scrag says Holmes versus Tyson was 3 months between being made and the fight date. Well, Larry Holmes said it was moved forward significantly and that he had a very short amount of time to train. I think he said just over a month. And again, he said this while sitting next to Mike Tyson, and Mike Tyson didn't dispute it. In fact, he just laughed. That's the Don King tactics. So, yeah, Fury, there was Whack at nearly 300 pounds, carrying the weight fairly well, to be fair. I mean, Whack probably carries 300 pounds better than Tyson Fury carries 265. He doesn't look as flabby as Fury. He's a very physically big man, Marius Whack, always has been. And I've spoken about the height before. Fury claiming to be 6'9". Whack is listed at 6'7". I don't see a 2-inch height difference, folks. I think there's maybe half an inch in it, if that. Scrag says they must have agreed to fight before the official date came out, as Larry was in fat camp for 12 weeks. That's not what Larry Holmes said. So I'm not sure where you're getting that information from, because Larry Holmes has spoken several times and said he only had a very short space of time. Maybe that was the original, like 3 months was the original time he had to train, but then they moved the fight forward. Jurassic says, I'm not saying I disagree with what you're saying about Don King and Holmes. I haven't seen that interview. However, Holmes was talking about fighting Tyson right after Mike beat Tyrell Biggs. That is true. But perhaps it was a thing where there was a number of opponents being lined up or looked at. Because that's the story that Larry Holmes has told many, many times that Don King turned up to his house with a bag full of money, told him he's going to fight Mike Tyson. And he was like, I can't fight Mike Tyson. I've been out the ring for 2.5 years. Don't worry, you're going to have plenty of time. Then when he signed for the fight and took the money, Don King moved the fight forward. Anyway, let's move on from Luke Partridge, Marius Wack. What do you guys think about this? What do you guys think about this? Anthony Joshua in career best shape for Christian Prenga, supposedly. This is according to various members of his team. According to Barry Hearn. What would you expect Barry Hearn to say? And what would you expect Eddie Hearn to say and everyone else involved? Of course they're going to say he's in career best shape because they want to sell him to the public all over again. But do you guys think there's anything to it? AJ says that these training camps with Alexander Usyk have been absolutely brutal. That he thought he was working hard before, but now he's being shown the real meaning of hard work. Do you think it's possible that he's actually, from a cardio perspective, being pushed harder in the gym now than at any time in his career previously? Or do you think he just feels like he's being pushed harder because of his age? I mean, AJ aesthetically still looks in great shape, but the cardiovascular system ages and it might not show outwardly. So do you guys think he's really in better cardiovascular shape now than he ever was before, or is it just his old body telling him so? Anthony Joshua's what, 37 now? 36, 37? Has he always been a guy that maybe controls his camp too much and doesn't allow his coaches to push him? Is he one of these guys that doesn't respect the coaches enough to give them the authority over him that they would want? But training with Alexander Usyk, a guy who's beaten him twice, who's done it all, maybe he does listen to him, because why wouldn't he? So here's some screenshots. AJ hitting the bag there. And in this footage, by the way, AJ looked absolutely exhausted. He could barely get any punches out when he was hitting the bag here. So presumably this was at the end of the training session, when he'd done everything else, when he'd done his sparring, and they told him to go hit the bag, and he had literally nothing left at this point. He was moving around and he looked absolutely knackered. I've been in that position so many times in the gym. We have trained for like, an hour and a half, 2 hours solid. And you try and hit the bag and there's just nothing there. You can barely keep your hands up. So this was from that footage. And you might notice here he's actually sparring Marius Wack. Was that a strategic thing for AJ to be sparring Marius Wack? Or was it Tyson Fury being strategic, fighting Wack, trying to get a spy in the camp? It's interesting, right? But Marius Wack definitely a sparring partner for Anthony Joshua. Let me know what you guys think about this. And also, interestingly, AJ sparring without headgear. That's always risky. You can get cut sparring without headgear. Here he's sparring, I think, I could be wrong, I think that's Jordan Thompson that he's sparring in this other screenshot here. This is another one where he's sparring Wack. And this is after the training session when they're taking the gloves off and he's absolutely exhausted. Billionaire says, AJ's always been in good shape. Yeah, but there's a difference between being in good aesthetic shape and being in good cardiovascular shape. There are plenty of, for example, bodybuilders out there that look in good aesthetic shape, but their cardio's terrible. And that's, of course, what Tyson Fury has always accused AJ of being, a big, stiff bodybuilder. Kieran Malcolm says that's 100% Jordan Thompson. All right, shout out to Hamzand. He's feeling the vibes. Undisputed says Fury is getting even more unpopular the longer he stays in the game. Big up James Clifford for the super chat. He says, I believe AJ because that training camp is in a boring town in Spain and he is not the boss of that camp. Do you think AJ has asked Usyk how to beat him? AJ isn't always the most direct communicator. He talks in riddles, doesn't he? But I reckon in a roundabout way, yeah, he's asked Usyk how to beat Fury. But I reckon Usyk has been volunteering the information rather than waiting for AJ to ask him. I think it's kind of implied for AJ to be staying in that camp that he wants to know the secret to beating Luke Partridge. But yeah, big up James Clifford for the super chat. In a boring Spanish town. Which town is that, by the way? I know the Usyk training camp is in Spain, but which precise town is it? Is it out in the sticks somewhere? Far from civilization? Big up James Clifford every time. JM says, he recently said that he'll be relaxing in the ring against Prenga, sticking his tongue out and just feeling good. Is that a good thing? You guys let me know what you think. Okay, Valencia. Billionaire says, Hatman, do you believe AJ can be champion again? I think he will be 3 times. We'll see. The belts are now fragmented, so it's more likely than it was before. Okay, someone is saying a little town in Valencia. James Clifford says, Gandia, I was there in February. Hey, James Clifford gets about. International Man of Mystery. James Clifford, big up. Shout out to Copezilla for the super chat. It says, have you seen The Odyssey? Great film. Yes, I have seen it. I've spoken about it in the last couple of streams. I really liked it. Obviously, there's a lot of controversy about the casting, but really, the controversial casting choices are only in the movie for about a total of 10 minutes. And it's a 3-hour movie. I was really impressed by it. Not gonna lie, I was really impressed. And I'm actually gonna go watch it again. I enjoyed it that much. Yep, great movie. I'll do a proper review either in a Night Flight show or on my Patreon page, because I really enjoyed that film. My 2 favorite scenes were the scene with the Cyclops, which was crazy, and also the scene with the witch. Lucan says, I think AJ is more mentally strong than Partridge. AJ can take criticism, unlike Partridge. Did you see AJ addressing Simon Jordan? Well, there are different types of mental strength, Lucan. So I wouldn't disagree with you on some level, but the type of mental strength needed for professional boxing is different than the kind of mental strength needed for social cohesion or social interaction. Let me just put it that way. So AJ might be a good person when it comes to interacting and getting along with other people and not clashing with people in social situations. And there might be an aspect of that which you could say is mental strength, where he can take the criticism and he's not going to snap at people as quickly as someone like Tyson Fury might. But Tyson Fury, in my opinion, and I think this has been borne out throughout his career, is a better big occasion fighter. He holds his nerve better. So he might not take criticism as well without snapping, but he holds his nerve better on the big occasion. I agree with Kayvon Green. I think Fury, in terms of fighting, is more mentally strong, but there are different aspects of mental strength. Scrag says, can Fury hit hard enough to keep AJ off him? I doubt it. If AJ can hold his pacing, he can win. Big up Colbzilla. He says, did you experience it in IMAX? I didn't see it in IMAX. And I've seen some controversy. That's the next controversy, right? Because the first controversy was over the casting. The second controversy is over the IMAX thing, because there's no access to IMAX where I currently live, which means that the picture is cropped in a certain way where you don't get a lot of extra detail. You know, the tops of people's heads are cut off and all that kind of stuff. So I haven't actually seen it in IMAX. But even without seeing it in IMAX, I was very impressed. Big up Colbzilla. For me, it's one of Nolan's better movies, to be honest. It's really good. I would encourage people to watch it. Even people that have reservations about watching it, I'd encourage you to watch it. You'll probably enjoy it. Desi says, Fury ain't worried about AJ. He knows fight night. If he hasn't got the instruction manual, he won't win the fight. And that's the thing about Fury compared to AJ. Fury has more intuition in the ring. He can figure things out for himself, whereas AJ is a scripted fighter, as other people have said there. James Clifford says, I wonder if AJ in private has asked Usyk, how did you beat me twice and what mind games did you use in the build-up? You know, when Lennox Lewis was beaten by Oliver McCall, he called up Manny Stewart and asked him to train him. And Manny Stewart was surprised because obviously Manny Stewart trained McCall for that first Lewis fight. And so Lewis wanted to know how Manny Stewart got Oliver McCall to beat him. He wanted to know what his flaws were. So he wasn't asking Oliver McCall, obviously, but he did ask Oliver McCall's then trainer, Manny Stewart. And Manny Stewart, following the money, instantly dropped Oliver McCall and started training Lennox Lewis. But getting back to Scraggs' comment, can Fury hit hard enough to keep AJ off him? I think he can. Or at least, yeah, I reckon he can. I think Fury hits hard enough. Alexander Usyk isn't a massive puncher. He's got respectable power. He obviously flattened Daniel Dubois. But he's sitting down on his shots more now, Usyk, than he did earlier on in his heavyweight run. But if you go back to the first Usyk-AJ fight, he hurt AJ early in that fight, lest we forget. So if Usyk is hurting AJ back then, I reckon Fury can hurt him. Shout out to Charles B. Yeah, AJ doesn't have great powers of recovery. And I do wonder whether there's some kind of relation between being very muscle-bound and having poor powers of recovery. I say this because Frank Bruno was the same. Frank Bruno was actually quite hard to drop. But he did get dropped several times in his career, obviously. But, you know, he wasn't a guy that just get whacked once in the chin and he's out cold. He wasn't like that at all. He would usually take quite a few shots to put Bruno on the ground. But once he was hurt, he just stayed in a fog, which he couldn't seem to get out of, you know? And he was a very muscular fighter, as is the case with Anthony Joshua. So I'm wondering whether there's some kind of weird neurological, physiological relation between being very muscular and not recovering well from concussive punches. I don't know. Just a thought. What do you guys think? Anyway, moving on from this particular topic of discussion, is Anthony Joshua in career best shape? It's a very cliche thing for boxing teams and promoters and whatever to say, oh, he's in career best shape. after the fight, if he gets knocked out, and I'm just talking about any fighter in general who has a team that is saying this stuff beforehand, after the fight, if he gets beat or beat bad, then we hear all about, oh, it was a terrible camp. He had all sorts of injuries. He was getting no sleep, you know? Anyway, let's move on. This is a very interesting story here. How many of you guys have heard about this? Devin Haney snubs Zuffa Boxing and signs with DAZN. Shakur Stevenson may be frozen out. Devin Haney agrees a multi-fight deal with DAZN and will fight Keyshawn Davis next. Haney, the reigning WBO welterweight champion, becomes the second fighter to be aligned with DAZN without the backing of a major promotional company. On Monday, Teofimo Lopez announced his deal directly with DAZN. Their relationship begins on August 22 when Lopez faces WBA welterweight champion Rolando Rolly Romero on DAZN pay-per-view. Zuffa Boxing was trying to add Haney to its roster and ultimately make a fight between Haney and Shakur Stevenson, but DAZN beat Zuffa to the punch for Haney's signature, which could leave Stevenson without a big fight. This to me is very big news. I made a video some days ago asking the question, does Devin Haney have leverage over Zuffa? Because they signed Shakur Stevenson not because Stevenson's a big ticket seller. He certainly isn't. Haney is a much bigger ticket seller than Shakur Stevenson. Haney has earned way more money than Shakur Stevenson, in case you don't know. So he was really the guy that Zuffa should have signed first. In my opinion, they shouldn't have signed Stevenson until they got Haney's signature. Because without Haney, they've got a guy in Stevenson who really doesn't sell tickets. Most of his performances are boring. He isn't a massive personality outside the ring. Yeah, he talks a little bit of smack here and there, but he's not exactly the most charismatic guy in the world. I'm not saying he's super dull, but he doesn't have the most amazing trash talk. So Stevenson's over there like Opetaia on Zuffa, apparently now without a dance partner. It's as if Devin Haney has bluffed Zuffa. Maybe he and his dad were playing Zuffa and DAZN off against each other. And by the way, Shakur Stevenson revealed that he was made a big offer by DAZN to sign with them directly rather than going to Zuffa. But he chose to go with Zuffa instead for whatever reason. Haney is stuck with DAZN. And at the moment, that seems to be the wise choice. Because you got Teofimo Lopez he could potentially fight, who's done a direct deal with DAZN. They're cutting out the middleman. The Haneys have always liked their independence. They've obviously tried to model themselves to some extent from a business perspective on what Floyd Mayweather did. So they've always valued their independence. And now he can make fights with whoever. You can make fights with a promoter. Obviously there's Devin Haney Promotions, but he could make a fight with Bob Arum on DAZN, with Eddie Hearn on DAZN, with Oscar De La Hoya on DAZN, or Devin Haney Promotions fighting Teofimo Lopez. Do you know what I mean? He's got a lot of room to maneuver now, Devin Haney. And that's not to say that the Stevenson fight couldn't still happen, but you would have thought it would be more likely to happen if Haney had signed with Zuffa, or if Stevenson had signed with DAZN directly. So interesting times. Wave says, I respect Haney for this. Afro Jam says, if Shakur is frozen out, he gets what he deserves. Such a talented fighter, but so duck sauce filled. It's spoiling his reputation. Afro Soul says, Haney is not the bigger draw than Shakur, Hatman. Well, I'm just going off their previous highest purses. Devin Haney's highest purse was against Ryan Garcia, and it was way, way bigger than any purse Shakur Stevenson has received. And he's been in more big fights, right? Vasyl Lomachenko. Afro Soul says that's because of Ryan, not because of Shakur. Yeah, but once you fight somebody like Ryan, you become more popular by association. You become a bigger draw by association. The money he made for the Ryan Garcia fight was 2 or 3 times more than Shakur's ever made. Omar says, one thing that annoys me about Stevenson is whenever someone calls him boring, he gets his feelings hurt and accuses people of not knowing boxing. Guy is as insecure as it gets. Yeah, I saw that with Shannon Sharp. You know, Shay is zesty as hell. He's not a person I really check for like that. Did anyone see that footage of Shannon Sharp walking through an airport, it looked like? And he had some kind of little dog in his arms, and he was dressed super zesty. He looked like, what's that character from Zoolander played by Will Ferrell? Is it Mugatu? Shannon Sharp was looking like the Black Mugatu in that video where somebody filmed him looking super zesty walking through an airport with a little poodle dog. And Shannon Sharp looked at them like he was going to bark at them or whatever. So yeah, so I'm not the biggest Shannon Sharp fan, but he stood on business when he spoke to Clarissa Shields, and he stood on business when he spoke to Shakur Stevenson. 10 toes down. He said what most of us would want to say. He spoke for the majority of the public when he interviewed those two people. Shakur Stevenson very often is boring in fights. Yes, he's very skillful and all that, but this is the hurt business. People like to see skill and then see you close the show. And you know, Shakur might be, I'm saying might, he might be the best fighter in boxing right now. Because he is, from a fundamentals perspective, damn near impeccable. You know, like when he fought Teofimo Lopez, I'm watching that fight and I'm like, Shakur just isn't making any mistakes. You know what I mean? Like everything he does is so fundamentally sound. The hand positioning, the foot positioning, the range control, the way he throws his punches, you know, bending his knees at the right times, the upper body movement, the angles, the footwork, everything. It was so immaculate. I was like, damn. Again, it's not the most entertaining, but if you know what you're looking at, you obviously appreciate the technique and the skill level there. Kind of like Mayweather, right? From a defensive perspective and just a tactical and angles perspective, it's extremely high level stuff. Advan Serb says his distance control is the best I've ever seen. It is ridiculously good. Okay, some people talking about Shakur versus Conor Benn. Well, I guess that's a possibility now, isn't it? Surely Shakur Stevenson would absolutely tear Conor Benn a new one. I mean, Conor Benn's got to fight Ryan Garcia. We'll see how that goes. And obviously he's a much bigger guy than Shakur. or at least fights in a much higher weight class. But from a skill perspective, god damn it all, Shakur Stevenson would pick Conor Benn to pieces. Never mind picking him apart, he'd pick him to pieces. All right, let's move on from Devin Haney. Zuffa are going to feel like he double-crossed them. But really, he made a very smart business move, it looks like. Zuffa were offering him all sorts of money, looking to match him with Shakur Stevenson, but in the end he was like, you know what, I'm good. I got more options over here if I do a direct deal with DAZN and more control over my own career. Because when you sign to Zuffa, well, Zuffa is a promotional entity. The Haneys have always liked to have control over themselves promotionally. That's why they tend to do short deals. And that's why they like to have their Devin Haney Promotions name on the poster, even when they're signed with a major promoter. So the DAZN deal gives them that freedom and that autonomy. So that's why he's decided to sign with DAZN. Anyway, moving on to a Zuffa fighter. Jai Opetaia is suing the IBF. He alleges industry-wide conspiracy to prevent him from becoming undisputed. Jai Opetaia IBF lawsuit demands title reinstatement. Former IBF Cruiserweight champion Jai Opetaia has filed a lawsuit against the sanctioning body after being stripped of his title earlier this year. The July 14 lawsuit alleges, among other things, that the New Jersey-based organization, along with other sanctioning bodies and prominent figures in the sport, conspired against him and engaged in an industry-wide conspiracy to punish the Australian for signing with Zuffa Boxing and to deter other athletes from doing the same. According to the 123-paragraph complaint filed in the U.S. District Court for the District of Nevada by the law firm Brownstein, Hyatt, Farber, Schreck, LLP on behalf of Opetaia, the IBF improperly withdrew their sanctioning of the March 8 bout between Opetaia and Brandon Glanton, quote, at the most damaging moment after the final press conference less than 48 hours before the fight, unquote, and later voted to strip Opetaia of his championship on March 19. What do you guys think about this? Opetaia's suing. He claims that not only the IBF, but other sanctioning bodies have conspired to make sure that he doesn't get to become undisputed. Eddie Hearn was actually named. I'm not sure if it's somebody that he's making allegations against, but Hearn was named in the Boxing Scene article. In fact, let me get the Boxing Scene article up so I can read more details from it for you guys. So it says, you guys won't be able to see this on screen, but I'll read it for you. It says, at the time, the IBF claimed that contrary to their rules, Opetaia was competing in an unsanctioned bout because the marketing materials and press release for the fight against Glanton identified the contest as being for the Zuffa Boxing Cruiserweight World Championship and made little to no mention of the IBF. The IBF say that Zuffa is not an organization they recognize as an official sanctioning body. Opetaia and his lawyers paint the incident in a much different light. There's a quote here. However, the president of the IBF, sitting in his home, allegedly felt embarrassed because of the IBF's belt placement during a press conference at an arena in Las Vegas. The IBF, encouraged by boxing's establishment, other sanctioning bodies and promoters, abruptly punished Jai. The IBF withdrew its sanctioning 48 hours before the fight after accepting payment and despite approving Zuffa Boxing's involvement from the start. Jai was placed in an impossible position: pull out of the fight he had spent months training for and lose his seven-figure compensation, or risk being stripped of his championship. Jai continued forward with the fight, and following his victory, the IBF formally stripped him of his hard-earned title. The conspiracy, quote-unquote, which the lawsuit alleges also involved the WBC, WBA, WBO, Mauricio Sulaiman, Gilberto Mendoza, Gustavo Oliveri, Levi Martinez, Alberto Leon, and Eddie Hearn. Okay, so Jai Opetaia is actually roping Eddie Hearn into this alleged conspiracy, among others. He says they serve to eliminate any opportunity from him to compete for the Big Four titles or to ever achieve his dream of becoming unified champion. As evidence, the lawsuit claims Opetaia's team are in possession of chat logs between the parties that prove their allegations. It also cites WBC and WBO cruiserweight champion David Benavidez' recent comments that facing Opetaia is meaningless if he doesn't hold a title. The suit further claims that foreshadowing public comments made by Eddie Hearn before the bout, claiming that the IBF would, quote, make a stance sooner than you think, unquote, and strip Opetaia, were proof of the organization never had any intention of sanctioning the Glanton fight and had planned their moves to punitively inflict maximum amount of reputational and financial harm on him. Additionally, the suit alleges the IBF violated the Muhammad Ali Act by accepting the $73,000 sanctioning fee before providing mandatory disclosures of where the money was going to the Nevada Commission. Opetaia, who beat Glanton widely on points, is hoping the suit will lead to his immediate reinstatement as IBF Cruiserweight Champion, compensate him for damages and legal fees, and block the IBF from naming a new champion while the suit winds its way through the courts. When asked for comment, IBF Championship Chairman George Martinez indicated the organization, quote, will release a statement when it is appropriate, unquote. All right, so Jai Opetaia naming lots of people in a lawsuit, suing the IBF, but naming lots of people as part of an industry-wide conspiracy to prevent him from becoming undisputed and to punish him for signing with Zuffa and intimidate other fighters against doing the same. What do you guys reckon about this? Shout out to JT Boxing. Much appreciated for the super chat. He says, big up, Hatman. My work, bro. Usyk versus Prime Larry Holmes. Who you got? I actually can't pick a winner. It's a tough one. Usyk versus Prime Larry Holmes. That is a very tough one. Now, Usyk is so good that the instinct, after watching him beat Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, Daniel Dubois, and so on, it's in recent memory, right? It's fresh in our minds, is to go with Usyk. But then you think about the Michael Hunter fight that Usyk had back in the days, which was tough for him. The Myris Breeders fight, which was tough for him. Close fight. You think how sharp Larry Holmes was with his jab, with his right hand, with his moves. And you think, no, Holmes can maybe win that fight. But then, how many southpaws did Larry Holmes fight? I can't actually remember any off the top of my head during his championship reign. Is there anybody in the chat, any of you boxing aficionados, historians, that can name me a southpaw that Larry Holmes fought? There weren't that many heavyweight southpaws around during the 1980s. Very few of them, in fact. Shout out to Danny. So I'm kind of like you guys. I'm kind of like JT. I don't know who to pick in that one. I would still edge Usyk, I think, slightly. But Larry Holmes was very different to anybody that Usyk has fought. He had a certain slickness about him, and he was very sharp with his punches, Larry Holmes. Very, very sharp. Obviously, the jab was incredibly sharp. But even his right hand was sharp. He had a nice right uppercut. I want to go with Usyk because I feel like Usyk was a little bit more defensively sound than Larry Holmes. Maybe a lot bit, actually. Holmes didn't have a bad defense, but I want to say Usyk, from a technical perspective, was a bit better defensively. I think Holmes was a bit faster. But I'll go with Usyk just. Shout out to JT. What about you? Well, you've said that you can't pick between them. Mascon says Larry Holmes fought Witherspoon and Wells, southpaws. Witherspoon's not a southpaw. Shout out to Copzilla for the super chat. He says Briggs versus Hay, prime for prime heavyweight. I'm going to go with Briggs. I'll go with Briggs over Hay, prime for prime. It'd be a close fight, though. Either guy. Briggs definitely got a better chin. Neither guy's got great stamina. Hay actually had better stamina than Briggs, believe it or not. Hay didn't have great stamina as a heavyweight, but he learned to manage his stamina by fighting with a low punch output, pacing himself. Briggs didn't pace himself very well. He was a front runner. He would come steaming out in the early rounds and try to take your head off and then have nothing left in the tank. So I would go with Briggs because he was very, very athletic in his prime. Very fast, explosive. He's got that hook up front. Very upright, though, Briggs, excuse me. Very, very upright. And Circle says Holmes always looked a little stiff to me. I don't know what Larry Holmes you were watching, bro, but no, Holmes is very fluid. Very, very fluid boxer. And definitely a sharpshooter, as Copzilla said there. Who would you have, though, Copzilla, in a Briggs versus Hay fight, prime for prime? Isaac Bling says, Jai seems to be the most unfortunate high-profile fighter currently in boxing. You know, all the stuff that Jai is alleging doesn't really make sense because he couldn't get the fights that he wanted even before he joined Zuffa. So, is he saying that they were conspiring to stop him becoming undisputed before then too? I guess they were, but not because of Zuffa, but because he's that dangerous. And that's just normal boxing. If you're dangerous and you don't bring an enormous amount to the table as far as commercial value, you're going to struggle to get the fights you want. You're going to struggle to become undisputed. You don't sell enough tickets to make the risk worth taking for a lot of other fighters out there. It's unfortunate because Opetaia is one of these old school macho fighters that wants to prove he's the best. And of course, we always, as boxing fans, want to support guys like that. But unfortunately, you know, if the other guys don't want to fight you because you can't pay enough money to get them in the ring, then that's just part of the game. Cobzilla says, Briggs is too aggressive. I think Hay picks his shots and takes him out Chisora style. Okay, I respect it. Alex says, so Usyk needs mind games to beat a bum. Damn, is Fury a bum? I've always thought that Fury was a fantastic fighter. I certainly never believed he was a bum. Anyway, let's move on from Jai Opetaia. We got some other stories to cover here. How about this one? Denzel Bentley elevated to full WBO middleweight world champion. Aleem Kanuli, who was previously the WBO champion, failed a PED test. He's now gone missing. I haven't heard or seen anything from Aleem Kanuli in ages now. His own country, or the commission in his own country, actually banned him. I forget how long it was for, but I'm not sure about the United States commissions, the sanctioning bodies. Well, the WBO have elevated Denzel Bentley, so is that a punishment for the failed test with Aleem Kanuli, or is it just because of the inactivity? But there you go, Denzel Bentley, a blue-collar fighter, becoming WBO world middleweight champion. And of course, he's been in the ring with Aleem Kanuli, and he's always wanted that rematch. He did better than most people expected, and in fact, in the past. And Denzel Bentley's spoken about how he's wondering whether Aleem Kanuli was on that stuff when he fought him. And if he wasn't, would he have done better? Would he have won the title in the ring that night? Rather than winning it by, what do they say these days, email? Denzel Bentley is known in British boxing as one of the nice guys. I actually get kind of annoyed about this whole reverence for nice guys in the British boxing scene. I think British boxing fans and pundits are a little too obsessed about, oh, he's the nicest guy you'll ever meet, nice this and nice that. I'm more interested in how good they are as fighters, rather than who the nice guy is. Not that there's anything wrong with being a nice person. It's all well and good. But as a boxing fan, I'm more focused on, are they good? Anyway, Denzel Bentley elevated. Bentley buzzing after WBO elevates him from interim champion. He opened his inbox on Monday and found out that he was the WBO middleweight champion. They CC'd me in the email. This is Denzel Bentley. I'm quoting from Bentley now. Bentley said, they CC'd me in the email, but I hadn't seen it because I was driving. Martin Bowers, Bentley's manager, was like, have you looked at your phone? He explained to me what it was, and I was like, oh, snap. When I got in, I looked at my email, and I was like, okay, that's it. I'm a world champion. The journalist asked him, did life feel any different when he woke up on Tuesday morning? He said, it's a good question, man. You know what? Before this happened, I was kind of over it. Everyone that knows me and knows the situation understood the situation and what it should be. So whatever happens, happens. I couldn't really care less. Then when the email came through, I was actually buzzing. I was happy. So I was like, yeah, maybe I do care. It's official now. It's in the history books. There's no question. There's no asterisks on it. I mean, it feels good. So there you go. Denzel Bentley. Is he Britain's newest world champion? I think he is, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. It just happened a couple of days ago, so surely he is. And certainly Frank Warren's newest world champion. But he'll want to consummate that championship status by defending the title against somebody that's actually got a pulse. Shout out to Kieran Malcolm for the super chat. He says, Hatman, I never saw Bentley getting this far after the Felix Cash fight. And that's what I wanted to talk about too. Who'd have thought the guy that got absolutely mullered, blitzed, destroyed by Felix Cash all those years ago would come back and have a much better career than Felix Cash? So the audio's getting choppy for some people, and the fix that people have spoken about on other streams is to close the stream down on your end, not on my end. Close the stream down and then reopen it. And that apparently solves the issue. So apologies to anyone experiencing any problems, but that's the fix that a lot of people have found. So I urge you to try it out. Big up Kieran Malcolm for the super chat. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. You'd think that Felix Cash, after winning that fight, would be on the upward career trajectory. But somehow, his career was on a downward trajectory after that fight. Lost to Tyler Denny. Yep. A lot of people have wondered about that Tony Sims gym, because he was with Tony Sims, right, when he beat Denzel Bentley, Felix Cash. And there was that recent, couldn't really call it an altercation, but there was that incident when Denzel Bentley and Felix Cash recently met up somewhere, or they crossed paths somewhere. And Felix Cash was basically trying to use London vernacular. He was trying to buoy Denzel Bentley off. Trying to buoy him off. To use old school American, particularly New York vernacular, he was trying to sun Denzel Bentley. He's trying to put him in a headlock and, do you know what I mean? That type of vibe. Act like he's his daddy. Pause. Someone says, Tony who wants an omelette Sims. Shout out to Danny for the super chat. He says, what percentage chance does AJ get chinned? Well, I think in yesterday's stream, or on yesterday's stream, should I say, it was either yesterday or the day before, I said there's at least a 30% or 35% chance that AJ at least gets hurt in the fight. Or did I say 30% chance that he gets chinned? One of the two. But I want to say, bare minimum, there's a 30% chance AJ gets hurt by Christian Prenga. In fact, I'll push it up to 35%. I think there's a 35% chance AJ gets hurt. Maybe a 25% chance he gets beat, knocked out. Because not only does AJ have the residual psychological damage from previous defeats, Daniel Dubois knockout defeat, the punishment he took in the Klitschko fight, he got touched up a bit against Povetkin, he took a lot of punishment in the first Ruiz fight. Not only does he have the residual psychological damage, but there's also neurological damage from those fights. And then we don't know the effects of the car accident. Obviously, his car accident wasn't as bad for him in terms of the damage he incurred as Errol Spence received for his, in his car accident, where you got flung out the car and teeth got smashed out and all that kind of business. All right, 1 second, folks. I just need to fix something here. I think I know what the issue is with the buffering. 1 second, people. Be right back. All right, peeps, we're back. Hopefully the issue is resolved. We'll see. What do you think, though, Danny? Do you think that there's any chance at all? I think you said the other day that there's a 5% chance AJ loses. Isaac Bling says AJ knocks Prenga out in the second round. The box says once Conor popped, all the Sims fighters fell off. Cordina and Ben lost their punch power, so did Cash. Craig Richards looks washed. Interesting. Now, I think the issue was somebody else here was streaming video at the same time live, and there ain't enough bandwidth. So I've kindly asked them to stop. Danny says, I think Jake Paul is better than Prenga. AJ by KO in 5. You know what? It's so hard to know whether Jake Paul's better than Prenga. He's certainly a lot more athletic than Prenga. Prenga looks terrible. In all the footage I've seen of him, he looks terrible. But he's a naturally much bigger man than Jake Paul. And, you know, the old cliche in heavyweight boxing that only takes one punch. JM says Hatman kicked the crap out of his housemate. No, definitely didn't kick the crap out of anyone. It's my girlfriend who is on a video call with somebody, one of her friends, on WhatsApp. So I told her to call her back later. All right, moving on from Denzel Bentley. We've got a couple more things to cover here. I didn't realize, maybe I mentioned it before, but forgot that I mentioned it, that Josh Kelly's actually defending his light middleweight world title on the AJ Prenga undercard against Ajako. Now, this should be a pretty straightforward assignment. Ajako has never impressed me. He went life and death with Ishmael Davis, life and death with Troy Williamson. He's still unbeaten, but like I say, I've never been impressed. With that being said, Josh Kelly isn't the most consistent performer. He seems mentally to be a bit up and down. He's alluded in the past to having issues with his mental health, having problems with drinking. And so with a guy like that, you can't always be 100% confident, even when he's going up against less than stellar opposition. Because when someone isn't particularly mentally stable, strange stuff can happen. Afro Jam says that is the most important fight of the weekend. What? Kelly versus Ajako? Maybe. It's a world title fight in the light middleweight division. I would expect Josh Kelly to beat Ajako without too many issues. But Josh Kelly did have some problems with Ishmael Davis himself, although he beat Troy Williamson handily several years ago. The same Troy Williamson that, well, has given lots of people problems, to be fair, but he certainly gave Ajako all he could handle. JM says he's more interested in Spence Zhu than Kelly versus Ajako. You know, the crucial thing, Danny, in that Jake Paul-Anthony Joshua fight is that Jake Paul landed a couple of big shots on AJ's chin and AJ remained upright. So even though Jake Paul is a lot more athletic than Prenga, way more twitchy and fluid and what have you, just looks more talented, can he punch like Prenga? I mean, Prenga's record, the 100% KO percentage, is against absolute pies. So, I mean, when we say pies, we're talking about the most limited, unambitious journeyman imaginable. The most obscure ones as well. So who knows whether his power is actually real. Because I've seen a couple of Prenga's knockouts and they barely even look like knockouts. I mean, it's one of them ones where he hits someone and rather than being concussed, they just see it as an opportunity to hit the canvas so they can collect their paycheck. Then he says, Jake Paul's legs gave out, that's why AJ started to land. Yeah, Jake Paul was exhausted after a few rounds because of the excessive movement. He was moving around all over the damn place, which did make it difficult for AJ to pin him down. But Jake Paul is not used to moving that much, especially not at that weight. So he couldn't keep it up. He got tired. Then he started getting tagged, as you say. The box says a number of those KOs are extremely dubious. Spark says AJ looks in great shape. He always looks in great shape. What weight is he going to be in this fight? That'll be interesting. So sticking on the topic of Anthony Joshua, we'll move on from Kelly Ajako. People don't really want to talk about that. Josh Kelly's still not a star in the UK. Jono says, Hatman, are you in GTA 6? Spoke about this a little bit on yesterday's stream. I'm not a massive GTA fan. I played the first GTA when it came out on PS1. I think I played GTA 2. Which was the first one that was in a normal third-person perspective rather than the bird's-eye view perspective of the first game? I played San Andreas. I played a bit of GTA 4, played GTA 5, but truth be told, I've never been a massive fan of the GTA games. And the older I get, the less enamored I am by them, because the characters, the story, the whole vibe is kind of geared towards very young men, teenagers and people in their early 20s. When you reach my age, it's like, this vibe ain't really for me. So I certainly won't be going out buying it on day one. Let's just put it that way. If I do end up playing it, it'll probably be way after it's come out. Orca says AJ's under 240 apparently. Is that right? Is that too light for AJ? Shout out to Brittany Galloway. What about Red Dead Redemption? I mean, Red Dead Redemption was incredibly impressive from a technical perspective, as most Rockstar games are. I was blown away by just the quality of the open world that they created in Red Dead Redemption, but I thought the controls were clunky. And a lot of the missions got so repetitive. I didn't think the characters were that interesting, to be honest, in Red Dead Redemption. I preferred John Marston as a main protagonist in the first Red Dead Redemption, as opposed to Arthur in Red Dead Redemption 2. Yeah, I was more talking about Red Dead Redemption 2 than Red Dead Redemption 1. So Red Dead Redemption 1 was more impressive to me when it first came out than Red Dead Redemption 2. I think the story was a bit more engaging. Cobzilla says, yes, GTA 6 won't be clunky. It will be 60 FPS. Somebody the other day was saying it's going to be 30 FPS, which kind of is in keeping with what Rockstar normally do. And I'm not really talking about the frame rate. I'm just talking about the controls. I don't find the controls, particularly in Red Dead Redemption 2, the controls felt very clunky to me. They weren't smooth, you know? June Sports, big up. He says, Prenga beat someone 6-41. No, I never played Bully. Long John Silver says, GTA 6 is absolutely going to be 30 FPS. Someone is saying Shiraz's opponent is not that bad. We can come on to that. I was expecting him to be diabolically terrible. I mean, it's a pretty quick turnaround for Shiraz, isn't it? He just fought a geezer and won the world title there. And he's fighting already again? When was that fight? That must have been less than 2 months ago. I know time flies and all that, but that's a very quick turnaround for Hamza Shiraz. So it was May 23rd when Shiraz last fought. So yeah, that's 2 months. That's a very, very quick turnaround. But again, the opponent was so bad. Why wouldn't you have a quick turnaround after that? You know? Afro Jam says, no, Shiraz's opponent is terrible. Yeah, I'm always someone that favors frame rate over fidelity. I really don't like 30 FPS games at all. That's one of the reasons I have never finished Bloodborne, despite the fact I really like that game. I just can't play 30 FPS. Just can't do it. My eyes don't like it. So I favor the smoothness of and the responsiveness of 60 FPS. I find it really hard to play 30 FPS games now. Have I played the Undisputed game? No, and I'm really not interested in it. I generally don't like boxing games. I used to play and like a few boxing games way back in the Mega Drive days. For American viewers, that's Sega Genesis. I liked Muhammad Ali boxing, Buster Douglas boxing, not Buster Douglas boxing, that was trash. Evander Holyfield boxing on a Genesis or Mega Drive, Muhammad Ali boxing, and there was also a game on PS2 called Mike Tyson boxing. I liked that as well, but I never liked any of the Fight Night games. No, I never liked the fight night games because the movement is so robotic. There's no fluidity at all. I'd rather just go to the gym and train, do you know what I mean, or even spar than, not that I spar these days, but some years ago, I'd rather go to the gym and train and spar than play fight night. It's just so clunky and robotic. The movement is so slow and stiff. Not a fan. Shout out to JT Boxing. He says, what chance would you give AJ becoming undisputed now? I think he could still pick up a belt or two from Gassiev with a vacant IBF. It's a big maybe, though. That's the thing. It really depends on who holds the belt. It depends on the heavyweight landscape. So many things can happen. If AJ got a chance against Gassiev, then he's in with a real shout of becoming champion. But let's see if the Fury fight goes ahead. If he can beat Fury, and there isn't a rematch, because there's constant contradictions from both sides. 1 second they say there's a rematch clause, but the next second they say no, there's no rematch clause. Let's say he gets through Fury, and I'm picking Fury, by the way, but let's say AJ gets the win, and there isn't a rematch clause. Well, Gassiev will be absolutely delighted to fight Anthony Joshua off the back of that. It'll be a massive payday. If Gassiev has still got the belt, that's the most winnable fight for AJ at the championship level right now. So if someone like that still holds a belt when AJ gets an opportunity at one, if he gets an opportunity at one, then yeah, there's a real possibility there that he becomes 3-time heavyweight champion of the world. There are so many ifs, though. The boxing landscape, particularly in the heavyweight division, is constantly changing right now. But what do you think, JT? What percentage would you put on it for AJ becoming champion again? Dominica says, Itama is coming for Gassiev. That's the problem, indeed. As long as Itama gets past Hrgovic, and I expect him to. The box says, Hatman, my coach is 45 years old and still effing guys up. I mean, I could still F some people up now. Sparring. But in a real fight with little gloves on against the younger person, particularly over a long period, I don't like my chances, to be fair. Even against someone relatively inexperienced. Because, the energy of youth, the stamina that you have when you're young, the resilience, the ability to bounce back, and also just the body. I mean, Conor McGregor the other weekend, he came out in the octagon and his knee, was it his knee? His knee blew out immediately. Once you reach past a certain age, that random stuff can happen to you, or that random kind of stuff is a lot more likely to happen to you. I mean, just recently, I've been training in a boxing gym here, pretty good facilities, and I keep messing my back up. I never used to mess my back up even 3-4 years ago when I was training. Or 4 or 5 years ago. I never used to mess my back up. But you reach a certain age and stuff just starts going. Back problem here, tennis elbow I got the other day. And when your body is stressed, like in a fight, the chances of an injury to the leg, to the back, to wherever, are increased when the body's under stress. That's the thing about getting old. But when you're relaxed in the gym, and as a young guy gets in the ring and you're moving about and you're doing the old man tricks and making him miss and making him pay, yeah, you can look like the bee's knees for a couple rounds. You know what I mean? Shout out to Danny for the super chat. He says, AJ will have a chance to show Fury where it hurts. Okay. Who you picking in that fight, by the way, Danny? AJ versus Fury. Who do you reckon's going to win that one? In fact, do you think the fight is going to go ahead? Because Fury's acting like it might not. Do you think the fight's going to go ahead? And if so, who you picking to win? Jono says, we need to see Hatman create a gaming channel. I used to have a gaming channel. Why did I stop the gaming channel? I think it was like copyright issues. You know, YouTube, and maybe it's not just YouTube's fault, but maybe it's legal issues that YouTube has with gaming developers. But the goalposts were being constantly moved as far as YouTube terms of service when using footage from video games, right? Even if it's your own gameplay. They were constantly moving the goalposts, and one day it's okay to use this footage, and the next day it's not okay, and then the next day the music from certain games needs to be muted, or else you get a copyright strike, and oh my days, it just got ridiculous. So I was like, I ain't got time for this, bro. So I removed all the gaming videos from my channel, all sorts of content ID and copyright strike and all this. I was like, no, I can't do it. I can't do it because the terms of service are always changing. At the time when I started doing it, it was okay. There was no copyright issues. But then they called it the adpocalypse, and it just seemed too problematic for me. I had to bow out of it. Okay, Danny says Fury will win against AJ. Joshua is spent cognitively. I tend to agree with you. Anyway, let's move on from this. Tim Bradley, did you guys see this on the Ring Magazine podcast? Tim Bradley's saying that AJ's got the best resume of all the major heavyweights out there right now. I'm assuming he's excluding Usyk. I could be wrong. I'm making an assumption there because Usyk has effectively retired. He's given up the belts. So I'm going to say, apart from him, according to Tim Bradley, AJ's got a better resume than anyone in the heavyweight division, including Tyson Fury. I can certainly see an argument that his resume is as good or better than Fury's. But what about Daniel Dubois' resume? Dubois got Filip Hrgovic on there, Jarrell Miller, when they were both still unbeaten. He's got Fabio Wardley. He's got Anthony Joshua. Okay, he hasn't had as many world title fights as AJ's had. Successful world title fights, but the resume is pretty strong. Yeah, he's got a couple of defeats on there to Usyk, but we're talking about the wins. Is Tim Bradley right when he says that AJ has got the best resume of all the heavyweights out there currently other than Usyk? And if you don't want to go that far, does he have a better resume than Tyson Fury? It was in this video right here, Ring Magazine. Tim Bradley blasts Tyson Fury return and says Anthony Joshua has the best resume. And by the way, they got this guy on there. You can see him on the far right of the screen. Shady McCoy, I believe is a former NFL player. And he represents the casual American fan, because his takes are like the most casual takes you could imagine. He's like a casual's casual. I'm not sure why he's on there, actually. Is it just to annoy people? Is that what it is? Like, if you have too much agreement on a show like this and too much reason, people are going to find it boring? Is that what they're thinking? So they want to put a fly in the ointment? Somebody on there that's going to ruffle feathers, even if what he's saying is stupid? I'm not sure what Shady McCoy's role is on that show. But basically, they were talking about Anthony Joshua, and they were all giving AJ his props. None of them were saying AJ's a great fighter. Timothy Bradley said, AJ's a good heavyweight. He's not a great heavyweight, but he's a good heavyweight. And Shady McCoy was sat there throughout, shaking his head in frustration. It's like he wanted to come out and say, Anthony Joshua is complete trash. I mean, when the Tyson Fury fight got signed, Shady McCoy turned up in the comments on some Instagram post. It might have been for the Ring magazine. And he just put a bunch of laughing emojis and he said, Fury's going to win this fight easily. Shady McCoy is one of these casuals who was completely taken in by the PBC, Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury propaganda machine. The box says, hardly anyone comes on that panel and ever has sane takes. I think Tim Bradley's takes have been decent. Long John Silver says he's a Wilder fan, maybe. Well, he might be, but I think it really just comes down to the kind of insular nature of American culture. Shout out to the Americans out there. I know you're not all like this, but America is an insular nation compared to most other Western countries. I mean, they've created a bunch of sports which basically only they play. And then they end up calling it the World Series and, this, that, and the other. Like, you're the only people that play it or that play in that series. How can it be the World Series? Anyway, so America is kind of an insular society to such an extent that if you haven't done things in America, let's say you're a boxer and you haven't won big fights in America, they don't care, a lot of the casuals, what you've done over there in Europe. It doesn't count. You could be 100-0 fighting in Europe and undisputed. If you haven't beaten anyone in America, we don't think you're any good. That is a mentality which is very prevalent among boxing fans in the United States. It's very weird, and not just among boxing fans, but even among fighters themselves. Like, if you haven't won a big fight in America, we don't believe you. Now, back in the days, I could understand that, because America used to be the epicenter of the boxing world, even the heavyweight division. But times have changed. In 2026, America is basically nowhere in the heavyweight division. And it hasn't been anywhere in the heavyweight division for decades. So for people like a Shady McCoy to still have that to still have that mentality is really odd. There you go. JT Boxing says, I saw some casuals saying Wilder's win over Ortiz is better than anything AJ has done. Their cover picture on Facebook was of Clarissa Shields captioned Queen of Boxing. It says it all really. Well, I remember I did a comparison between Anthony Joshua's resume and Deontay Wilder's resume back in the days, comparing the records and the credentials of the opponents they'd faced in title fights. One of the comparisons I made was between Alexander Povetkin and Luis Ortiz. Because when AJ fought Povetkin, he was in his late 30s. When Wilder first fought Ortiz, he was in his late 30s. Povetkin achieved more than Ortiz as a professional. He beat better guys than Ortiz beat as a pro, and he beat way better guys than Ortiz did in the amateurs. And these are guys of a similar age. There is no metric that you can produce that suggests that Luis Ortiz has ever been better than Alexander Povetkin at all. Povetkin was the dominant super heavyweight for years in the amateurs. Olympic gold medalist. Up until fighting Anthony Joshua, obviously just the one loss on his record to Vladimir Klitschko. Ortiz never fought anyone as good as Klitschko. So that right there alone demolishes the idea that, oh, Ortiz is better than anyone AJ beat. Like, give it a rest. Povetkin's better than Ortiz. Ortiz never even qualified for the Olympics. Obviously, it's hard to qualify for the Olympics when you are a Cuban. But it's hard to qualify for the Olympics when you're a Russian as well. Someone says Ortiz was dangerous, though. Well, Povetkin was dangerous. You see what Povetkin did to people? See what he did to Carlos Takam? That's when Takam was still somewhere close to his prime. Povetkin demolished Momo Cha, remember that? He done Takam, he done Mike Perez in a round. When Perez was unbeaten, knocked him out. Yeah, and way past his best, he knocked out Dylan White. That's right. That was long past his best. All right, so Joshua Prenger on the weekend. We've spoken about that enough. Spence Zoo, we've spoken about that in previous streams. I look forward to watching it. Seeing if either of these guys has got anything left at all. So there's quite a bit of boxing on this weekend. Obviously, we won't get to see the Partridge whack fight unless somebody videos it from ringside on their smartphone. If Netflix even allow that footage to get out. Jono says Povetkin rocked AJ. Yeah, he did in the first round. Bust his nose. I thought AJ actually adjusted quite well in that fight. Because he came out in the first round and he tried to meet fire with fire. And Povetkin was piecing him up. And it was the same in the second round as well. But then from the third round on, I want to say it was the third round, AJ actually got on the back foot. He started dropping his left hand to draw the lead from Povetkin, popping his jab, and walking Povetkin onto shots, which is really the way to fight him. In fact, that's another comparison I made. I'm glad you guys reminded me. Zheli Zhang's got a better resume than Luis Ortiz. And I said that actually, I think after the first or second Joyce fight, I said Zhang's better than Ortiz. At least that version of Zhang. Maybe not Zhang now, but then better than Ortiz. Again, Zhang, an Olympian. Stopped Joe Joyce twice. A lot of people believe he should have got the win over Hrgovic. Knocked out Deontay Wilder. Obviously, Wilder was washed by then, but still. Then he says, Povetkin stunned AJ as he was fighting with his left hand in a downward position. Now, if you watch the first round, AJ had both hands up. He was fighting in the classic AJ style, hands up, Rob McCracken stuff. And Povetkin caught him with an uppercut through the middle. That's what stunned him. After the first couple rounds, AJ started dropping the left hand. And when he dropped the left hand and got on the back foot, Povetkin stopped landing. Which seems counterintuitive, but dropping the left hand is a more relaxed posture, for one. It invites the lead from the opponent. And if you've got the height and reach on him, you can draw the lead, make him miss, and make him pay. But in that first round, you go watch it back. AJ's got both hands up, and Povetkin catches him through the middle with an uppercut. Forget if it's a left uppercut or a right uppercut. So AJ makes a good adjustment in that fight, gets on the back foot, uses the reach, and draws Povetkin's sting and takes him out. You know, Povetkin, as with so many of these former Eastern Bloc fighters, he refined his punch technique to such an extent that he could deliver devastating power with barely any wind-up. He's kind of like Artur Beterbiev in that way. You know, Beterbiev will land a shot that only seems to travel 6 inches, and you don't see the kinetic chain, right? The kinetic chain has been refined to such an extent that you don't really see it, but when his punch lands, the effect is devastating. Povetkin had the same thing going on, where he'd refined his kinetic chain to such an extent that you couldn't see it. There was such little wind-up on his punches, but yet the effect was crazy. The left hook he knocked Carlos Takam out with was like that. It barely traveled a few inches and it knocked him cold. The same thing with Dylan White. That uppercut was such a short punch, but the effect was crazy. And you see that mostly with those former Eastern Bloc guys. You don't see it that much with American fighters or British fighters. Those old Eastern Bloc guys are absolute sticklers for technique, for doing everything with quality rather than quantity. And that's one thing I've personally observed. Indeed, Triple G's another one, perfect example. That's one thing I've observed firsthand. See, I never used to train the way that the British coaches in the gym wanted me to train. I always trained in a way that would emphasize punching power at all times. Everything I threw was a hard punch. Even the jab was, I tried to put maximum power on every single punch, but refine it in such a way that there wasn't a tell on the punches. And for years, I was the only person that I would see in the gym training like that. Yeah, I'd throw very fast bursts of shots, but everything had to be hard. And I'd spend a hell of a lot of time on the bag, more time on the bag than anyone else in the gym. I'd be on the bag an hour, hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours. And almost nobody else did that. Then I started seeing these Eastern European guys coming into the gym training. And they were training in the exact same way. See, I'd figured out to train that way myself. It just seemed logical to me. When I saw these Eastern European guys come in and they were training like me, I was like, so that's what they must be teaching these guys. I remember I was training alongside some Eastern European kid. I'm not sure what country he was from, but he was clearly Eastern European. And he can't have been any more than 170 pounds maybe. He was like I guess a good size light middleweight/middleweight. But his power was crazy. I'm a heavyweight. And I'm hitting the bag next to him. And I'm like, damn, this guy can punch. And he wasn't hitting the bag like one of these typical English amateurs, you know, throwing a gazillion punches. He was focusing on power and quality. And when he was hitting the bag, the knuckle was digging right into the bag. It was making a massive crack. And I was like, yes, this is how people should be training. In fact, when he spars, I want to make sure I go watch him spar. This guy's going to be taking jaws off. And there were several others as well that I observed after that. Eastern European guys who'd obviously had an amateur grounding in whatever country they're from in Eastern Europe, and they'd brought it with them to the UK, and they continued to train like that. And so, just to put it in a nutshell, their emphasis is quality over quantity. Now, obviously, there are different styles of Eastern European boxing. You've got the Usyks and you've got the Bivos, but one of the styles certainly is like the Beterbiev, Golovkin, etc. And they are absolute sticklers for quality over quantity. Every shot needs to be quality. And the philosophy behind that is, I only need to land one good quality shot to neutralize the 4 or 5 poor quality shots that you just threw, which I can easily block or duck under, that are not as accurate and well-timed and well-placed as mine. I place 2 real high-quality, ridiculously powerful shots, and you're done. Or at least I've won the round because I bust your face. Do you know what I mean? All right, peeps, I'm going to bring this one to a close. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining the conversation this evening, with a special shout out to all those who donated via Super Chat. If my YouTube studio will comply here, I'll name those people that donated. 1 second. Shout out to Connor William in the chat. Yes, so those who donated were JM, big up, Luca, James Clifford, Copezilla, JT, Kieran Malcolm, and Danny. Big up, big up. Until next time, you guys take care out there. Be good. And I'll catch you on the other side. I'm out.